Now, therefore, I, Cindy Lerner, Mayor of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, on behalf of the Village Council and its citizens, do hereby proclaim the 3rd day of August 2015 as Xavier Suárez Day. Yeah!
My district is a really interesting district. It goes all the way from Key Biscayne to Pinecrest. I think in an east-west direction, Mayor Lerner, I think it's probably the widest of all. And it mostly pretty well off folks, you know. And so if you've seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War, there's a moment where he refers to his district, the 2nd Congressional District in Texas. He says, I represent the 2nd Congressional District in Texas. I get to say yes a lot. So I get to say yes a lot. And when the city of Pinecrest, in the person of the vice mayor in this case, because the mayor calls me or emails me or visits me about twice a month. That's a good month. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 times a month. In this case, it was the vice mayor who mentioned the issue of the polls, the FP&L polls, and actually looking out of the office at City Hall, you can actually see one of these extra polls that hasn't been removed, you know, and they're really unsightly. And if I remember correctly, I'm pretty good at math, I think there are 296 others like that. So, of course, community newspapers features that story in the front page. I think that's the only time I made the front page, right?
So far.
One other time that I wished I did not make the front page. So that's my prop, and I thank you. I always try to say a little bit about, and of course I'm also honored to have here the manager and fine police chief. Rene Landa and I came up together. He was a little older than I was in the city of Miami, but he was one of our high-ranking officers, and I think at one point you may have been assigned to the SIS and maybe had some opportunity to give me a little bit of dignitary protection. I would never mention, by the way.
You gave me 2 proclamations.
So you have 2 days named after you. By the way, I would never mention when there was a death threat against the mayor of Miami, but because I think that's counterproductive, and I wish other politicians wouldn't do that. But after the fact, I can tell you a story, and that was in relation to when the Miami Police Department, or maybe it was Dade County at the Port of Miami, found a guy inside a container. He had traveled from Cali, Colombia, inside a container, and when they questioned him and squeezed him a little bit, he said he was here in the United States. He had been sent to eliminate, I think he meant kill, right, Chief? The governor, the mayor of Miami, and the state attorney. So, you know, the police called me and they said, we have this thing. It happened about a week ago. We've been providing security to the governor for a week, and we think we should provide security to you. So I said, oh, you started with him a week ago? And you know, that's great. So I wasn't much for security. I would always elude these guys, and you know, you'd hear the radio cracking, you know, car 1 is missing, and then you'd hear the other end, what do you mean missing? You're supposed to be with him. We don't know where he is. I would walk out the back and whatever. So they were fun days. They were fun days. I would also hitchhike a lot, Mayor Lerner, so I don't know if you do that, but whenever my staff wasn't there, when I was getting ready to leave after I gave a speech or whatever, they weren't there, I would just go to the next corner because I had an appointment, and I would flag somebody down and they would take me to a radio station. One time they took me to a radio station, and poor Jeff Watson, who was my aide, later became assistant to the president's intergovernmental affairs, working out of the White House, and Jeff was saying, I don't know where the mayor went, but all of a sudden he was at the radio station, and I had gone to the corner and hitchhiked from 27th and 27th Avenue and I guess Flagler. So a lot of fun times, but more seriously, our budget this year, once again, is, you know, it's an enormous budget, folks. When you hear the county doesn't have money for this or doesn't have money for that, you really have to question it. If I saw the numbers correctly, we're getting an extra $120 million, keeping the millage rate even, and that hopefully will help to full fund the Pets Trust program. And So when you hear, you know, there's no money here, no money there, well, what are you doing with all the money that you have? Our operating budget is, I believe we reached 4.7 billion, and our capital budget is another 1.3, I think, this year. So we're very, very close to $7 billion in total, or maybe it's 5 point. I'll get the number straight before I leave today. A big increase over last year. A total $120 million new dollars for our operating and for our operating budget, and then the capital budget, of course, is determined to a great extent by something you approved in 2004, building better communities. Okay, and that was a total of $2.9 billion. I checked this week. The committee that oversees that is headed by Katie Sorensen, a former county commissioner. We've only spent 1.1 billion of that. So why are we delaying in some of these projects? And that's a valid question. But back to the operating side, yeah, it's 4.8 this year and 1.5 capital, so it's 6.3 total. I want to make sure I get the numbers straight. On the 4.8 billion of the operating budget, have we really streamlined Dade County? 4 years ago, I was elected to a commission seat. Mayor Jimenez was elected to the mayoralty, and I took his seat. At the time, we had 4,400 managers in the county, 4,400 supervisors, okay? 2,500 of them make over $100,000, if you can believe that. 61 make over $200,000, and a handful make over $300,000. By the way, if you didn't see me vote on the salary for the new county attorney, who I love and respect, it's because I didn't want to be the sort of sole dissenter, you know, but I cannot see paying anyone in municipal government more than $300,000. In fact, I had an initiative, which for the moment I have pulled back on, but you'll see it someday back again, which is to limit the salaries of county officials that are not the elected one, the constitutional officers, at the same level as Supreme Court justices in the state of Florida, which is $162,500. I think Mike or Grant or somebody at one point asked me, well, what about folks that you can't get for that amount? And I said, well, I can't think of too many in the county. And then all of a sudden I kind of slipped and gave one. And I said, well, Jennifer Glazer Moon, okay. You know, she has the budget memorized more than I do, although I'm getting close. I'm getting close. The number of employees that do the work, that cut the lawns, you saw the problem with the parks, that man the libraries or staff the libraries, okay? I found out from Mayor Lerner, actually, about a month ago, that Pinecrest Library is closed on Fridays. Are you kidding me? Fridays is probably the most important single day of the week to have the library open, if Saturday isn't, which many of them are not open on Saturdays. So I led the battle last year to increase the millage rate for libraries, but it wasn't really an increase. Someone pointed out to me in an email, because I was elected 4 years ago, my first budget year, the millage rate was set at 0.17 for libraries. It's a separate millage rate, as you know, in your tax bill. And I said, well, we're holding the millage rate even, so that should be a similar budget to last year. And they said, no, we're having to cut half of the library facilities. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense mathematically. Again, my numbers, you know, same tax base, actually a little bit bigger each year. This year, almost 9% bigger than last year, almost 10%. And I said, how can it be that we're at 0.17 and we can't keep the same level of library services? And we're closing down libraries and cutting hours in some of the other libraries. And then they explained it to me. We had been using up reserves from years in which the millage rate was almost 3 times the 0.17. So here we're holding the line on taxes, and actually it was being reduced by almost to a third. So I said, I was the first voice, and Mayor Lerner and others around the table insisted that we put the millage back up to, it's still not that high. I think it's a 0.28 of 1 mil. So it's still not what it was historically when we had one of the best library systems in the world. So that's in the budget this year with no arguments from the mayor, from the administration, and I think it passed, that millage rate I think passed unanimously. Maybe we had one dissenting vote, but basically unanimously, okay? So Last year was a battle. This year everybody saw religion, and we're okay there. As far as the rank and file employees in the county that I was telling you about, we have gone in 4 years from 22,000 to less than 20,000. We've gone down by 10%, the people who do the actual work, while the managers have gone up by 6%, from 4,400 to 45 something. A span of control is the ratio of employees doing the work to supervisors. In the private sector, most of you represent the private sector, and it's heartening to see that, because a lot of times you don't touch a chord. If you don't have people like Ed Williamson and many of you in the credit unions and the hospitals and healthcare providers that are here, they don't understand the span of control cannot be what it is in the county. You know what it is in the county? 4 years ago, I'll tell you what it was, 4.9 to 1. You know what it is now? 4.2 to 1. These are not my figures. From the internal auditor, we get these. So the number of people in one department, it's 2 to 1. I used to, my math would get messed up. In the fire department, I would say, well, there's 2,100 firefighters or employees in the department, and 700 of them are supervisors, so that's 3 to 1. I go, wait a minute, no, that's 2 to 1. That's 1,400 that are doing the work, and 700 are supervising. And it makes no sense whatsoever, folks. You know, we should be somewhere in the vicinity of 7 to 1, 6 to 1 at least, and that would mean a lot less managers, a lot less high salaries, and better salaries for the people who do the work. By the way, the other thing that happened 4 years ago is they reduced their pay, all of the pay of all the employees by 5% to pay for health care. And I go, wait a minute, many of those folks, there's a lady in water and sewer, triple minority, interestingly, she's black, Hispanic, and a woman, and she gets, her nominal salary is the same as well, her nominal salary is $24,000, okay? But by the time, you know, she gets her paycheck, she gets paid less than I do. And my nominal salary is $6,000. By the way, don't believe it when the commissioners say, oh, my salary is $6,000. You know, we have a lot of benefits that go with it. I take home $3,000 every month in cash, okay? And so poor Kalila gets...
Fives or 20s?
Well, it's funny because I get 2 different paychecks, okay? One is for my expense account and one is for my, you know, my salary. And or one is for the benefits and the other one is for the salary. The salary one is really small. So when I get that twice a month and sometimes, you know, I'm expecting the bigger check and I get the smaller one, it creates a little havoc in my bank account. But, you know, that's the kind of mismanagement that we've had in 4 years. And we really cannot afford to continue in that direction, because this year, that $120 million extra that we're getting is coming from your pockets. It's taxpayers' money. The millage rate will stay the same, but everybody's valuation is going up, so you're going to be paying a lot more taxes. Are we going to get the bang for the buck that we deserve? Are we going to get the Pets Trust finally funded the way it should have been? Are we going to get some affordable housing built? Are we going to get a system of transportation that we need and deserve in this county? And that's what I want to dwell on for a couple of minutes. You may have read about it. If you didn't, please let me know and I'll send you the Herald editorial. It took me a couple of years to develop a global transportation plan. One of the linkages in the system that we very much need is to connect South Dade, Dadeland all the way to Florida City. The mayors of South Dade and Representative Kiani McGee begged me to get involved in this thing, and I went down to Homestead. I made a presentation. Jim McDonald was there on behalf of Pinecrest, and South Miami was represented by the mayor, Mayor Stoddard, and all the other cities, Otis Wallace, all the other mayors, Eugene Flynn, and Peggy Bell were down there. As was Kiani McGee, as was the congressman from the area, Congressman Curbelo. I am totally bipartisan, folks. Whoever gets the job done, that's what I'm interested in. You know, I was telling Ed about Jose Javier Rodriguez, our fine state representative from my district. I was the first public official that supported this young man who is a fantastic, not because he went to Harvard Law School, but that helps. And he's a fantastic state representative. I went down there and I proposed a full funding plan for our 4 main linkages that we need. We need the extension of Sun Life along 27th Avenue. It's been promised to those folks forever. We need Bay Link. And I want to take 2 minutes to tell you about Baylink. That has not been easy, but we now have a plan in place, and we're proceeding to the PD&E, which is, Steve helped me, but it's planning, development, environmental, I think. Engineering. So that's Baylink. But the fourth one, and very important to the people gathered here, many of you, is the West End connector. And yes, we are going to rehabilitate that CSX line, and we are going to have a connector going east-west. We should have had an east-west connector many years ago. Instead, we spent the money on the Miami Intermodal Center, which could have been built by the private sector. It's being funded by the private sector, but a certain amount of bonding capacity was used up for that. So those are the four main branches. And we need those. We need those trunk lines, and we need those trunk lines to then be served by neighborhood circulators of every type. The cities have done a good job with their trolleys. God bless the city of Miami. I want to tell a quick story. My son had just been elected, and I was not yet on the county commission, and he postponed the final vote on the city of Miami trolley system because he wanted to discuss what fares were going to be charged. So I texted him. I had just learned how to do texting at the time. And I said, what is it that you want to charge that you're holding up the final approval? And he texted me back 4 letters, Z-E-R-O, 0. And that trolley system in the city of Miami works extremely well, precisely because people don't have to think that they have some kind of a fare to pay, a token, you know, turnstile or anything like that. The same is true of the People Mover. The People Mover battle was not easy. There was a couple of commissioners who wanted to charge a fare for the People Mover. The People Mover is carrying, I think now, 9 million passengers a year. It feeds the entire system. And downtown would come to a halt at lunchtime if people were being charged for the People Mover. And instead, the vote was 9-2. And by the way, against imposing a fare. And the vote to not increase the Metro Rail, Metro Bus fares this year, for the first time, we stopped the bureaucrats, we stopped the administration. The vote was 7-6. And Commissioner Monesteem, our chairperson, came aboard on that and understood that. And lately, Commissioner Moss has been heard to say, I'm beginning to agree with Suarez, I'm beginning to agree with some other commissioners who say, to the extent possible, the main trunk lines of the system have to be such that there's no disincentive to get in, ideally free, and subsidized in some other way. And then, of course, you can have the neighborhood circulators, and they could charge a certain amount of money. I would prefer $1. For many years, I've been arguing with the county, if you don't have price elasticity curves, you don't know what happens when you change fares. Or they go, yes, we do. Every time we increase fares, the ridership only goes down by a little bit. You know, we increased fares the year before that by 25 cents, 12.5%, and we expect the ridership not to go down by anywhere near 12.5%. I go, no, you guys are not understanding what I'm talking about. I'm talking about price elasticity going down. Did it ever strike you that if you next year announce that you're only going to charge $1 instead of $2, that you might get twice the ridership? You know, it's just beyond belief. But anyhow, so now I do have, even though I have a very wealthy district, I do have a responsibility to all the people of Dade County to take care of those that are in the worst financial shape. And I do that not only for ethical reasons, but I do that because I am newly appointed Chairman of Economic Prosperity of the county. By the way, those of you in public health, that's one of the areas within my jurisdiction, Peter, and Liz. And I also have affordable housing under my jurisdiction, homelessness, anything that's economic prosperity, economic development. And so I put forth just this last week, and, well, first of all, on transportation, I completed a book. If you get a chance to read it, The Wealth of a Nation. My books are always a takeoff on famous titles, okay? Adam Smith in that case. But I mentioned that in Dade County, our unemployment rate is higher by 0.5 point to 1% because of what's called, in economics, voluntary unemployment. People for whom it just isn't worth it to you know, go get that job. I mean, a lot of times, they spend $7 or $8 to get across the county to a hotel in Miami Beach, and then they don't get that job, and then they got to spend another $8 to $10 the next time, either in tolls, which are killing us, of course, or in the Metro Rail, Metro Bus system. And That's why I concentrated so much on transportation my first 4 years. Plus, the rest of us who may have a car and may be able to afford what do they call the Lexus lanes or whatever it is where you get to go really fast, you know, the VIP lanes. I got a kick out of that. Here's a public good that's supposed to be free for everybody. The one thing that is free, we paid for 20 years ago, and now they're charging us to use a lane so we can go a little faster than everybody else. It's fine for those of us that have the Sun Pass and those of us that can afford it, but you imagine the other working people. In the area of affordable housing, I just proposed a major initiative last week to the workshop headed by Chairman Mana's team. I'll make sure to get it to you all and we can analyze it. Some of the components are, there's 3 components very quickly. I want to take $50 million from general revenues. That $120 million, whatever we don't need for the Pets Trust, I'm always carving that out. We made a commitment 3 years ago in a vote, and we got to fulfill that commitment. But whatever, about $50 million of it from general revenues to build affordable housing, because we have 70,000 people that need affordable housing in Dade County. My own staff, if you earmark units for what's called workforce housing, which is up to 140% of the average mean income of an individual, many of them can't afford them, you know, and the ones that can afford the monthly payments, they can't afford the down payment, so they can never own a unit. So what are we going to do? We're going to give up on the American dream of everybody owning their own place? We got to 70% on that, by the way. Republican and Democratic administrations under Jack Kemp, who took the job away from me. I was supposed to get Secretary of HUD, but that's okay. I love the guy. And Henry Cisneros pushed affordable housing, pushed home ownership in the United States to almost 70%. And then the recession hit in 2008. How many people have lost their homes? So my plan has the 3 components: general revenues, $50 million, a linkage ordinance. This wasn't easy. I had to go to Boston to find one that would be equivalent. Any building over 100,000 square feet contributes a certain amount. And by the way, the Miami World Center project by itself would have been, if the ordinance was in place, $5 million for affordable housing right there. And the third prong is on the cost side. Okay, you insurers and you bankers that are out there, you know the PITI formula, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. I want to cut down the T and the I as much as possible, so that it's principal and insurance, and also the building cost. And my estimates, and by the way, again, my son features in this. You saw his proposal last week that close to downtown, you don't need to have parking with some of the housing developments, because people can walk to their jobs. And that's a feature of this that would work both for East La Havana and Overtown. Look forward to the declaration of a community redevelopment agency in Overtown. I'm also proud, by the way, for those that are soccer fans, of having taken the lead in proposing a location with hopefully the University of Miami right next to the Marlins Park. And you know, all this talk about how that's spiritually tainted. Well, I'm not concerned with anything that happened in the past. You have a gorgeous looking facility. I would not have financed it with the full faith and credit of the county or the city. That was a big problem. Et cetera, et cetera. But it's built now. We have a team. We happen to have a couple of pretty darn good ball players playing for them, pitching and hitting. And we have to support it. And to make that area go, having a major league soccer facility next to it, I did a 3-dimensional maquette for it. I showed it to the world, and that's where they've chosen now apparently to locate, hopefully with the University of Miami. And by the way, are we cutting it? We're cutting it close. I just want to say, since he's kind of signaling me and he controls the media here, you know the story about never fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrels, right? I did that many years ago in 1998. It'll never be repeated again, okay? I lost that battle, but I'm doing very well by community newspapers. So, just on that statement, I do want you to know that I'm using social media too. On the issue of that location being spiritually tainted, you know what I tweeted after they announced that they were going to that location? I put, from spiritually tainted, quote unquote, to the promised land. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's the ideal city or county that you, across the country, which one's the ideal city or county that you see?
In different things, you have different cities. In the old days, we would always look at, on things like recyclable waste, we would look at Seattle. on bringing major league franchises. We now should look at Miami, you know, but at the time, any city but Miami, we were the worst. We had just basically had the, when I was elected in 1985, the Dolphins had moved up north, or were moving up north. In areas like transportation, Denver's looked at a lot. There's a big delegation of folks that are going to Denver now. In affordable housing, linkage ordinances, Boston.
Homeless?
We're looking pretty good. We're looking pretty good. We used some. The affordable housing project, I also looked at Montgomery County, Maryland. And then there's livable cities. Those are some of them. I bet you Mayor Lerner and Steve and some of the other public officials around the room can give me some ideas. It was an interesting quote, but when I was elected mayor, or before I was elected mayor, Ferre was the mayor, of course. And Ferre was a great internationalist. And there was once a quote from Mayor Andy Young in Atlanta that said, when I grow up, I want to be like Maurice Ferre, in the sense of making Miami an international city. When I was elected in 1985, the problem was not the international aspect of Miami. The problem was the domestic situation, the neighborhoods. And I took it upon myself to start catering to the neighborhoods, as I am trying to do now here in the county. Because I think, for example, the West End is really, really ignored in the South End, and particularly in terms of transportation. And not only east-west in the case of the West End, but north-south. So for the north-south, we don't have rail for the most part. We have one possibility, but we use basically wheeled, facilities, the trolleys that I mentioned, neighborhood circulators, etc.
But I wanted to ask you, when we read the mayor say on Monday that we don't have the money for something, and then on Tuesday he finds the money for it, and on Wednesday we don't have money for something else, and on Thursday he finds the money for it. How do you handle that? How do you look at that budget? Do you point out how he's reading it wrong, or he's the only one that gets it? Yeah,
you should see my emails back and forth. The media has never asked for them, but I point specific mistakes, and also I can regale you with my task force report, which I presented to the City Commission in 2011 when Chairman Joe Martinez was the chairman, and I've revised it twice since then. And it calls for reductions in management personnel of about $300 to $400 million. And that would give a lot of money for neighborhood circulators, for transportation. By the way, when you talk about neighborhood circulators, when you talk about jitneys, the other day we approved a fare increase or some modification of the jitney contract. And one of the commissioners, I asked, well, how come we only have these minivans in parts of the city and not the whole county? And they said, well, we're restricted to not having more than 30% of the overall system. And I go, what if we can do 100% with privately owned, because the beauty of those is the operator's typically the owner of it. And you get treated a lot better if the person's driving their own little jitney or van or minibus or neighborhood circulator than if they're working for someone else. So a lot of those things are just lack of innovation. I mean, let me give you another figure. We have 33,000 building codes in the county. I know South Miami can't be anywhere near that. When you have 33,000 building codes, you could name a building code after an employee, 26,000 of them, and still have 7,000 left over. We have over 1,000 pay scales. Mayor says we have streamlined the departments. Folks, we have 25 departments plus 13 agencies. If you're going to meet with all your top people every day, which a good manager should do, you can't have more than 8 or 10 people reporting to you. So then you have all these deputy mayors. And then you have all this other, senior advisor and this and that. We also have a lot of spokespersons. I'm not a big person on spokesperson. Every time I see a spokesperson for the police department, what happened to the chief? And if the chief is not, is on vacation, what about the deputy chief? I mean, what is this? We're creating all these titles and acronyms. I don't even want to get into it.
One last question. The County Commission recently changed its stance on folks that have minor possession of marijuana. Would you care to comment?
Yes. It was made clear that we're not telling people you can smoke marijuana in public. If you think and the healthcare professionals here can back me up on this, if you think that it's good for your health to smoke marijuana, you should be careful to note that the marijuana that's being sold now is not at all like the stuff that some of us smelled in college, okay? Father Paul, I went to a very Catholic university, you know, Villanova. They were very well known for drinking, but so the idea is that we are putting through the system as many as 3,500, 4,000 cases of possession of marijuana, and a huge percent are African American or Hispanic. And so they're getting a record for possession. This is crazy, you know. If you have a good lawyer, you know that you're going to get some PTI, you're going to get something, and then you expunge your record afterwards if you're young. So that was the idea of Commissioner Sally Heyman. We tweaked it a little bit. We required education. We required reporting back to agencies. We don't want somebody to think just, you know, I can smoke marijuana in public, get stopped by the police, pay $100, that's the fine that's set, and forget about it, you know, start over again. So it did have some protections in it, but hopefully will free up also police time and people. I mean, having these people in jail until they bond out, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, really, it's part of a national trend too, to, you know, lower a little bit the sentencing and the punishment for people who do, you know, crimes of that sort that are not really the most destructive things, but particularly for young people. We probably should have, well, I don't know that you can do it in the law. Anyhow, it's within state law. The state law basically sets the penalties. You know, Miami-Dade is not changing the criminality of this. It's just changing the treatment that we give the kids that are, mostly kids that are stopped.
The figure I saw was a little bit less than 4% of people that were arrested on misdemeanor charges ever were convicted. So you got 96%.
Yeah, I forgot to mention
There was a waste.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, if you're in possession, the chief might be able to help us out here. Not smoking, but possession, less than a certain amount. The police have an option of giving you a civil penalty for $100, or they can arrest you. And if you can't afford the $100, you can serve 2 days. That's the last time.
Yeah, and I think the standard was set at somewhere around 8 or 10 grams or something. There was a little confusion on the county commission
how much is that?
when somebody started talking about 8 or 10 pounds. But
thanks again, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Quick round of applause.